So whenever you're ready to begin, you can go ahead and do so.
Good morning. My name is Ed Schmier. I am the president of the Affordable Housing Professionals of New Jersey, and I'm pleased to welcome you to our webinar this morning entitled "A Crisis Within a Crisis Revisited." You will see that the focus of the webinar today with our wonderful panelists is on the affordable renters that many of you serve as administrative agents and otherwise. And the confusion and the anxiety, I think a number of them have, having lived through the bulk of the COVID pandemic, but now trying to figure out about how CARES money might help them, when foreclosures may or may not begin, and so on. So we thought it would be helpful to assemble a panel today that could address some of those issues as we move into the end of the year. And with that introduction, I thank you for coming. And I'd like to turn the program over to Jordan Goodwin. Jordan is the Social Services Director for the Princeton Community Housing here in Princeton, and also is involved with Griggs Farm, which they oversee and administer, which has 70 units of affordable renters. So Jordan, it's all yours.
Thank you, Ed. And actually, if you don't mind, we're going to start with Ed Truselli, and then he'll pass it over to me.
Thank you, Jordan. Good morning, everyone, and thanks for the opportunity to be here today, along with my colleague Jordan and the other folks on the panel. I hope that the information we can provide today will provide some value to all of you. Not all of this is going to be earth-shattering, unique information, but it's just good, solid counsel and advice, and hopefully you all can take it and adapt it or adopt it as it may be to your situation. So I'm going to share my screen real quick. Hopefully this works. And is everyone seeing a screen? Okay, great. I see people nodding. That's a good sign. So just a little bit of background about Princeton Community Housing and who we are. We are a not-for-profit organization in Princeton. We were established back in 1967. And one of the unique features of Princeton Community Housing is that we are represented, or we have representatives from the community at large, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. And we currently have now 466 affordable rental apartments in Princeton, providing homes to about 1,000 or so individuals. This is just a quick, compilation, if you will, of all our communities. As Mr. Schmier mentioned, we have Griggs Farm and Princeton Community Village, which we'll focus in on because that's where we have our multifamily rentals in Princeton. We also have two age-restricted communities, Harriet Bryant House and Elm Court. But again, we really want to focus on these two communities, which is Princeton Community Village, which is our first community established in 1975 that has 239 apartments. And Griggs Farm, which is unique because it's an inclusionary project, inclusionary property. Out of the 240 homes that are there, we own 70 rentals, and then there are also 70 affordable sales units at Griggs Farm as well. So it's a 50% inclusionary community, which is very, very unique. And we established that back in the early 1990s. We're also an administrative agent. We work with the municipality of Princeton to act as an administrative agent for some of their portfolio, as well as the Princeton University, which owns properties in town. And this is one example where there are 56 very low and moderate income units in one of their developments in the center of town. So we have an active role. One of the things that we've been doing over the past 9 or 10 years since I've been fortunate enough to be with PCH is that we've really tried to be more than just a housing provider. We wanted to provide more sort of services and supports to our residents. because that's very important, as all of you know. And these are just some of the things now that we've been able to do in that 10-year period. We have a great pre-K and after-school enrichment program at Princeton Community Village. At our age-restricted communities, we have a congregate care program, which provides meals and house cleaning and personal aid services. We have a food pantry working now. Service coordination, and Jordan's going to talk a little bit about that. We work with NAMA and JAMA on the college scholarships. So we have a whole host of things now that some of which we didn't have 10 years ago, again, trying to be more comprehensive in what we do for our residents. This sheet shows you a little bit about some of the network of community partners that we have. And this is the sort of the theme of what Jordan and I are going to talk about today is, you know, PCH is unique in that we have this community partnership kind of built into our structure. As I mentioned at the top, you know, we have these 18 organizations that some of which helped to found Princeton Community Housing, but are still active partners. And this network of partnerships has expanded beyond these 18 organizations to other organizations in town. And when there's a crisis, it's great to have these partnerships. So what I would encourage all of you, if you aren't already doing it, whether or not you're a nonprofit provider or a for-profit provider or an administrative agent, is to always build your networks, build your connections with your community and even beyond. And, you know, we'll talk about some of the county-wide resources that are out there today as well, but locally do what you can to maintain your networks. In Princeton, there's an executive directors collaborative that meets quarterly. So you really get to hear some of the challenges some other people are working against. But, you know, things like food assistance and rental assistance, you know, these are the types of things that we were able to tap into and also establish our own framework with others, you know, during the COVID pandemic. And we continue to have those. And Jordan's going to really talk more about that in her role as our social services coordinator. So Jordan, maybe you can take it from here.
Sure. Thank you, Ed. So as a social services coordinator for Princeton Community Village and Griggs Farm, my main role is to connect residents with resources. And typically this comes in the form of newsletters, flyers, direct communication with residents. Another part of my job is fostering relationships with community partners so that I can make the connection when residents come with specific needs. And this is really at the core of who we are as an agency. It's through coordination and collaboration with area organizations and groups that we have been able to serve our residents successfully over the years, especially when the COVID-19 crisis hit. And since March of 2020, we've seen a spike in the need for rental assistance, food assistance, and health-related resources. Next slide, please. I will continue talking about the next slide. Let me know if you need me to share, Ed.
Yeah, for some reason it's not advancing, but hold on, I'm frozen somehow here. That's very unusual.
Maybe if you try unsharing and then sharing it again.
Yeah. There we go. Sorry about that.
Oh, great. Okay, so this slide is about the initial COVID-19 Emergency Relief Fund, and we call this SURF. This was an emergency initiative put together by a group of nonprofits and organizations in Princeton shortly after the pandemic hit New Jersey. And the purpose of SURF was to support individuals and families who were impacted by the coronavirus shutdowns and were facing financial hardships. Participating organizations included the Princeton Children's Fund, Princeton Human Services, PCH, Princeton Senior Resource Center, Send Hunger Packing Princeton, among others. I was a member on the SURF steering committee, which operated for just over 5 months until all the funds had been exhausted in August of 2020. This group was made up of 10 steering committee members, 3 intake coordinators, and 2 supervisors. And the way that this worked was cases would be assigned to the steering committee members, and we would conduct intakes, we would collect documentation from applicants, and then we would present and process the cases on a call that would occur twice each week. So a total of 413 grants were awarded throughout the 5 months of SURF's operation. Next slide, please. So when the SURF effort ended in August, PCH decided to create our own rental assistance fund. And these funds have come from fundraising efforts to support PCH residents in need during the pandemic. Our application and renewal process were based off of the SURF model, and I serve as the primary case manager processing applications from PCH residents. We also have a steering committee made up of PCH property managers and administrators that meets to discuss the cases. And we will continue to administer these funds until they run out. So some other sources of assistance that we have. So as I mentioned, we rely a lot on community connections. And so I'm constantly trying to keep up, educate myself on what resources are out there, how to apply for them, and what the associated eligibility criteria is. So I often look to the resources provided by Princeton Human Services. So I urge you, if you haven't already, to be in touch with your local human services department and utilize the resources that they provide. So here's a list of additional rental assistance resources that I would consider recommending to residents after I speak to them about their specific circumstances and needs. And one of these resources is on the next slide, which is a flyer for housing initiatives of Princeton. We frequently share this flyer both in English and Spanish to our residents, as Housing Initiatives of Princeton is a close partner of PCH. And since 2020, they have been administering a community development block grant from HUD to residents of Princeton impacted by the pandemic. So this is a key resource for our residents. Another need that arose during the pandemic was for more food. So we had a partnership with the YMCA for a couple of months during the summer of 2020, which involved weekly food deliveries to residents' doorsteps. This effort ended in the fall due to circumstances with their supplier. However, we were able to initiate another partnership with the Jewish Family and Children's Service in Princeton, where their mobile food pantry visits PCV and Griggs Farm on the third Wednesday of each month. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this is a flyer that we will advertise to make sure that residents know they can sign up for this. The boxes of foods include produce and non-perishable food items, and we have between 40 and 50 households receiving food each month. So I'll conclude with a few keys to success that I've found in my work. So first, as Ed and I have discussed, interagency collaborations are essential. We cannot do this work alone. It takes the community coming together, working together with their resources and skills to support those in need. So I urge you to reach out, introduce yourself, and make those connections. Secondly, open communication is very important. And by this, I mean listening attentively to people with empathy and kindness, making yourself available, and communicating in the client's preferred language when possible. We send out resources on a regular basis so that people can help themselves and reach out to agencies directly if they prefer that. And we also don't just wait for people to come to us. We proactively reach out if we see a household is behind on rent, and we try to find out what's going on and how we can help. Thirdly, persistence and advocacy are necessary for supporting those who may not be in a situation to advocate for themselves. Sometimes you need to call more than once or speak to more than one person in order to get the information or resources you need. Sticking with it, having patience, and putting in the time is not always easy, but this is such important and rewarding work to use our position and our skill sets to try and make a difference. And last, but perhaps most important of all, it can be very difficult to ask for help. So in my work with residents, I strive to convey respect and actively work to destigmatize help seeking. The reality is that we all need help sometimes, and asking for help is brave. So this destigmatizing work is crucial and is something we can all do. So thank you for your time and attention today, for the valuable work that each of you do for others on a daily basis. It's a privilege to serve alongside you. Ed and I have included our contact information here. If you'd like to reach out to us and follow up with anything we've shared today, we would be happy to take questions and comments from you as well following the other panelists. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jordan. That was really helpful and educational. I'm going to make an awkward attempt to go back and maybe put a little context around our presentation today, talk a little bit about some logistics, and then we'll move on to the next panelist. If you were with us a year ago on this topic, the title of our session today is A Crisis Within a Crisis Revisited. And that implies that we're revisiting this topic. And last year we did a program on this issue. And, as I was preparing notes and talking through the program committee in preparation for this, the one thing just kept coming back to me and just basically, what a difference a year can make, right? I mean, at the time that we were originally talking about this, there were very few dollars available. We were in the early stages of the winter surge of COVID-19. The solutions that were made available to us under the CARES Act were sort of hamstrung by regulatory firewalls that were built into those programs. So while the CARES Act put $7 billion on the street, or maybe $9 billion on the street in total in response to COVID-19, there were some really systematic regulatory issues with using those funds to solve these problems. Jordan spoke about one of those programs in particular, the CDBG program, $5 billion across the country. It was very limited by how it could be deployed, the amount of time and some of the other regulatory things. Emergency Solutions Grants, very similar. It was well intended. It was a large allocation of those funds, but again, there were some regulatory issues with putting them on the street. So at the time that we talked about this a year ago, it was bailing wire and duct tape and fingers crossed and just hope and prayers that we were going. And the other thing that's worth remembering is that the federal eviction moratorium was due to expire just a few days later after our session. A few days after that, in late December, the federal budget was passed that included a $25 billion allocation for the Emergency Rental Assistance Program, ERAP. And what's really interesting about that I think is worth talking about before we move on, because we are going to spend some time on that topic today, is that it was a program that was purpose-built for this issue, right? It was a program that was designed from scratch. It was not an attempt to push money through an existing regulatory framework and make it work for a situation. So there were two major issues with that, though, right? There was the design of this program that hadn't been done yet. Communities were literally receiving wire transfers of tens of millions of dollars based on and expected to start programs based on a couple of pages of regulations with a promise of additional regulations later. And these were also agencies and government entities that were struggling with implementation of CARES Act funding, again, to the tune of $9 billion across the country. They were beginning to have to start planning for vaccination programs and how that was all going to work. And if you remember back in last January, it was a little bit hit or miss with how that was all going to roll out. So there was a serious amount of pressure that was already existed in these departments and in these communities around the country struggling with this. And then we're being asked to tool up a program from scratch and run it. And I think you sometimes hear that phrase, like, we're building the plane as we're flying. But to me, I felt like that doesn't even hit the mark here. I feel like the government was asking people the communities to build a mega mall on Thanksgiving in preparation for Black Friday. That's because there's no time to ramp this up or do a nice soft opening. And this is you have to design a program that is capable of accepting a tremendous amount of pressure and interest right out of the gate. So again, we're going to talk more about that today. But last thing I want to mention, there's a couple of logistical things. We have been approved to issue CEU credits from Rutgers government offices. So if you are an administrative agent or MHL, you can use these the CEU towards your affordable housing professional ongoing education. We've also applied for APA New Jersey and with the Superior Court for those lawyers in attendance. as part of that process, there's going to be a couple of questions that are going to pop up, and here's one of them now. A couple of questions that pop up just to make sure that you are participating and actively engaged with us. So if you're looking for those CEU credits, by all means, you please be sure to respond to these questions. All right. So next up, we are going to hear from what I consider to be one of the superheroes of any community with a high population of low and moderate income people. Elisa Advani is a lawyer with the Central Jersey Legal Services. She assists low and moderate income clients that are facing eviction. This is what they do all the time. This is primary service of the legal services of New Jersey, and obviously the demand for those services has ramped up incredibly with COVID-19. And I'm going to turn it over to her and get some thoughts about what she's seen on the ground, and then we're going to finish up with with Christina Harkar from Mercer County's Board of Social Services to talk about the ERA program and how they're managing that program and how it's working for them. Lisa, if you want to go, I will turn on the slide for you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me this morning. My name is Elisa Advani. I am a staff attorney at Central Jersey Legal Services, like you just heard, and we provide legal services to low and moderate income residents of Mercer County. Our office is in Trenton at 198 West State Street. We're open in a limited capacity by appointment only. However, I just meant the physical office, but we're all working remotely. Thank you for putting up that slide. So there's our office address, and our phone number there is 609-695-6249. If you need to get in contact with us, or if your clients need to get in contact with us and be screened for eligibility to see if they qualify for legal services. The laws and the different protections that are available, protections from eviction, are changing every day. And so we're here to assist and provide you with information on how the different protections might help clients depending on their situation. So there's no blanket protection right now, and there is some misinformation and misconceptions. If a person is under a certain income level, they can be protected from being evicted based on rents that were owed during the pandemic period starting March of 2020. But this protection does not apply automatically. And so an online certification of income has to be filled out. And our office can assist with filling out that form. And then based on that, renter households that are below 120% of the area median income are protected from eviction or removal for non-payment of rent that occurred between March of 2020 and August 31st of this year, 2021. And for renter households that are below 80% of the area median income, that eviction protection extends to rents that are unpaid through the end of the year. Now, the biggest misconception out there is that rent is not owed to landlords during the pandemic, and unfortunately, that is not the case. Rents are still due. It's just that, if you're in that income category, you will still owe it. You just cannot lose your home based on those rents. And when it's important to note that when a tenant is certifying their income, when they do that certification, they're not only certifying what their income is and that they should be protected. They're also certifying that their inability to pay rent was in some way related to COVID-19. Additionally, you're certifying that you have applied for federal, state, or local agency rental assistance. And then there is a link on that same website for the DCA rental assistance program to apply there. That is just one of the many programs that are available. So the new protections establish a new funding to assist tenants to bring their rents current. So therefore, the protection from eviction goes hand in hand with the tenant's efforts to get those back rents paid. Now, there are other issues, of course, facing renters besides non-payment of rent. We have seen, always, and of course now, even during, with the pandemic and everything, people are having issues where maybe their house or apartment is in disrepair. And so they want to force the landlord to do those repairs. And so we can provide legal advice and representation in some cases on those cases where you want to raise a habitability defense and withhold rent from the landlord in order to force those repairs. If you're serving clients that are need legal assistance, please refer them to our office. We, every case is unique and special. There's no blanket rule that applies in landlord-tenant matters. And we're available to meet via telephone and Zoom. And in some cases, we will meet in person in the office. And like I said, that's by appointment only. There are various ways to share, for clients to share documentation with our office. You can even drop it off. We have a mail slot if that's the easiest way for some clients. You can mail us documents or fax them or email them. And we encourage clients to do that because since every case is different, we would like, ideally an opportunity to really evaluate everything and provide tailored advice in each case, and in some cases represent if there's litigation. So I'm happy to take questions. I know that was a lot of information. Just one more thing, I don't think I mentioned that there's one of the programs available right now is a Princeton pilot program. My office and Homefront have a program where we're assisting residents in 2 zip codes, 08611 and 08618. And so, if you have clients that qualify in those zip codes, then they can contact our office or Homefront for more information. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. That was really helpful. I do have a question though before we move on. And by the way, if anyone has any questions, the Q&A box is available to you. We have a pretty significant amount of time in this program today to allow for some back and forth and some questions to be answered. Lisa, what can you give us? I think a lot of the people on this call today might find themselves in a position to make a referral to your office or the regional office that's appropriate for them. Can you give us a little bit of an understanding about what that intake process looks like? Is there I know in Trenton, when I would refer people, I would always tell them you're going to call, someone's going to take your phone number, and then you'll get a call back in a couple of days. Is that, what is that experience like? And has it changed with COVID-19?
The biggest difference is just that we're not meeting people in person. We would usually set up an appointment and clients would come in for that initial appointment, but the intake screening was always done over the phone, unless of course we did walk-ins back then, and that's changed. So the intake process, it's pretty quick. So, your clients would just call that main number. We are open from 9 a.m. to 5, and we have, people answering the phones in real time. of course, you can also leave a message and we will call you back, if not the same day, then the next day. But the screening is just, we would ask basic information, of course, income and assets, just to find that income eligibility for legal services, unless for senior citizens, there's no income limit. And we serve, so there also has to be a citizenship certification or a showing of permanent resident status in order to be our clients. If you have clients that have legal questions and they are, don't have the status to become our client, there is a legal help hotline, which I probably should have provided that phone number, but I'm going to find that if you give me one moment, and then I'll put it in the chat.
Great, thank you. That'd be really helpful.
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to move on. I mentioned there's another question for you to all take a moment and respond to, but I'm going to take this time to pivot a little bit. I mentioned earlier that the ERA program, again, came out shortly after our last session. The initial investment was $25 billion with a B. There was another $35 billion that was added to that program back in the spring with the American Rescue Plan passed under the current administration. So there's theoretically, if you were to look at this at the national level, there is sufficient funding to address what was the estimated arrearages of rents about a year ago, so the pieces are sort of in place, but there is an incredible amount of responsibility and effort that's required at the local level to run these programs. I mentioned that in a non-COVID time, there are rental assistance programs and homeless prevention programs may get half a dozen calls a week or more from folks looking for assistance, and programs were designed for that level of market or that level of demand. This is a whole different world now, so it required communities to set these programs up from scratch and to make them resilient enough to meet the demand. Added to that was a little bit of sort of confusion that came with the design of the program. And this is something that I know Christina is going to talk about, but I wanted to sort of outline it and make sure that there's a clear understanding of it. The Treasury awarded these funds as a formula grant, and they decided that in addition to making counties eligible of a certain size, population size, that they were also going to award funds to each state. And unlike other formula grants and some of the other programs that you might be used to, there is no exclusivity between the programs. In other words, the money that was a portion of the funds that were awarded to the state of New Jersey are intended to be spent in the county of Mercer, yet the county of Mercer got its own funding. And this holds true for most of the counties in the state. I think there's only 2 or 3 counties that did not receive a direct allocation on that formula, and all their funds went to the state. So there are situations where that someone could be applying to both programs or misunderstanding where they've applied so it's very clear. It's very important if you're the one answering the phone from someone that has a level of frustration that about applying to one or more of the ERA programs. It's very important that you sort of isolate where they've applied. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Christina Harkar. She's with the Mercer County Board of Social Services, and she is the one that lays awake at night trying to put all this money on the street and design a program. Christine, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to be on this panel today. Mercer County Board of Social Services entered into a partnership with the County of Mercer Department of Human Services to provide emergency rental assistance to households who were financially impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. The emergency rental assistance, which we call ERAP, provides rental assistance, rental arrearages, utility, home energy costs and arrearages to eligible applicants who, which they may receive up to 12 months of back utilities and back rent, and an additional 3 to 6 months of what we call prospective rent, for a total of 18 months of assistance. We began taking applications in March of 21. The rental assistance, we go back to April 1st of 20, and that's when the 12 months begins. So anything prior to that, we cannot assist the person with. So if they owed rent prior to April 1st of 2020, that we cannot assist them with. The household must document that someone within the household had experienced a reduction of income, qualified for unemployment benefits, suffered a major cost directly or indirectly due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And they have to demonstrate a risk of homelessness or housing instability. The household must be at or below 80% of the area median income, but with a priority for below 30%. We had 2 sets of applications. The first round began March of 2021, and we received about 2,500 applications in that first month. We closed the application process at that time in April. It was like around April 5th. We closed the application process because we had so many applications to go through. We reopened in August of 21, and we're going to keep it open for as long as the money's there. So right at this point, we have close to 3,500 applications. We ask for that you can go online at mercercounty.org/ERAP to submit the application, and you can upload all of the documents that are required to do so, for us to do the process of approving or denying. We try not to deny. However, we do send denial letters for people that we've repeatedly asked for the documents that we need so that we could evaluate the case. And with the hope that we're not really denying you, we're sending you the letter so that you can send us back what we need to properly evaluate. And we will reopen. It's not like we're going to deny the person and then, oh, well, too bad. It's not like that. We go beyond that. Documents that we would need would be we need pay stubs. We need current pay stubs, current wage, whatever your wages are now, what your wages were in 2020. So we can use your tax return or a W-2. We have access to a number of systems. The unemployment system we can look into to get that information if the applicant does not have it. We look at Social Security benefits, SSI benefits. There's a wide range that we can look for. We look for proof of the COVID-related issue. All of this is based on that it's COVID-related. We need proof of the back rent. We get 12-month histories of utilities. We can get that through public service or whatever you're in Mercer's public service or Jersey Central Power and Light or Trenton Water. Or so we can get that information, or if the applicant hasn't, we get it from them. We need a recent lease or a statement from the owner of the property. And we've found that most of the landlords are very cooperative. They whatever we ask for, they're getting us the information. The one thing that we cannot do is we can't, if the applicant applied for ERAP, but they also applied for the DCA program, we cannot we cannot pay the same months. So it does get a little complicated for us because DCA doesn't pay the same way that we do. There are certain months that they may pay 3 months and then they don't pay another 3 months and then they pay 3 months. It's very complicated how they do it. But so we can only pay what they have not paid. I'm not sure what other questions you may have. Along with all of ERAP, this is the Board of Social Services in Mercer. So we also have emergency assistance for people who are on SSI benefits, TANF benefits, or general assistance. And if they're not eligible for one of those programs, we automatically are sending them over to the ERAP program, so that our goal is not to keep people housed. We do not want people to be evicted at the end of this. So if you have any questions, please, I'm here to answer them.
I've got a couple, if you don't mind. Christina, give us an idea. What's the back of house look like there? How many people are keeping this program running at the Board of Social Services?
There's
6.
Mhm.
That's very impressive.
I have four social workers, 2 clerical, myself, but the majority of the work is from those 6 people.
And you mentioned that you have access to getting information about income and benefits and things like that. Is that unique to the Board of Social Services, or is that because I know if you're running are typically administrative agents, if they need to verify those things, there's an extra form that needs to be filled out, to act on someone's behalf or to seek information on someone's behalf. Can you address that at all?
We always have that. We can do that. We can look up all of those things. We have access to all of those systems because we're the Board of Social Services.
That's really interesting. And speaking of which, it's relatively unique, I'm going to say, and I'm curious to know if you agree with the statement that a Board of Social Services is taking this program on, right? I mean, all the counties there's a lot of discretion in how these programs are rolled out. Some counties and communities are working with vendors and third-party contractors. Mercer County is a little bit unique, right, in that it is decided to bring it all in-house.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we are one of the few who did this. I'm not even sure there's another Board of Social Services that did it. It is a lot of work for us, but we felt that since we had the ability to look at all the other systems, we already had things in place on how to pay these vendors. They are already the landlords, we already know them. So we had all of that in place to begin with. So when the county brought it to us, we said we would be more than happy to do it. And it is work. I'm not going to say it isn't, but it's a benefit to all of us, I think, and the community, because we already had all this in place.
That's really interesting. There's a question in the chat, and I again encourage folks to throw them into the Q&A box. I'm sorry, I said chat, but there's a Q&A from Dwayne, and he wants to know about your funding source. Is it CARES Act or U.S. Treasury or something else?
It's CARES Act, U.S. Treasury.
Right. So this is, technically this is the ERA program out of the Treasury. So if you Google U.S. Treasury ERA, you will find the regulatory framework from which Christina is working under, and that's something that's also worth unpacking a little bit. And that the U.S. Treasury designed this program to be incredibly flexible. I mean, it in a kind of an unprecedented level. I'm going to go out on a limb there and say it allowed. Or it allowed people to apply with very little documentation and a lot of self-attestation,
Yes.
rather than providing the document. Someone's able to basically sign a statement, and they can even do that online, saying that this is in true a factual situation. But that was those are local decisions, right? And exactly how much flexibility you apply locally.
So what we did was, when we realized that we were going to be involved in this program, myself and the county wrote the procedures and the policies and how we were going to run the program. And it really was a lot of us making these decisions on how we were going to do it. We want everything to be in place, and we're following what Treasury has given us, but they left it open. So a lot of it, we wrote the policies. And yes, we do take self-attestations from people. If they don't have certain information and there's no way for us to get it, they can write a statement and we will accept that.
Yeah, but this is clearly a your mileage may vary situation, in that you've adopted those policies in your program. Someone that's in another county or another tenant in another county may have a slightly different experience in not only the process itself and how you apply, but which of those flexibilities and policies that particular county adopted. And so it's important that people know that if you're from outside the county of Mercer, that this program may not live with the Board of Social Services. It may not live with a community development office. It could be handled through a third party. So, hopefully everybody that's on the call today is already aware of the county program that's in their community and how to refer folks to it. But it is really important to understand that the latitude is the flexibilities that the program has afforded everyone are being applied on a case-by-case basis. And I think it's fair to say that some of the slower programs, or some of the programs that are a little bit slower to roll out, have maybe opted not to take some of those flexibilities and give those latitudes. I don't know, Christina, I don't know how much time you spend in working with other counties and hearing about other issues around the state, but do you feel as though that there are things that you would have done differently, with the experience that you've had to date?
I think we wouldn't have closed the application process. That was the one thing that we did that we thought we shouldn't have done afterwards. When we went back and were looking at it all, we thought, that was a mistake, closing the application process. The second thing is we're looking forward. So we're trying to figure out how we're going to do this in the new year to see, if things are going to change. And one of the things that I've suggested is I would like to have staff literally sitting at the court, so that if someone is coming in that is being evicted, is going to tenancy court, we can do that application right there and make that agreement with the landlord if possible. Anybody who has a docket number now, we do contact the court to let them know that they're most likely going to be approved and we will be paying that rent. But we're trying to think of things of how we can do it just a little bit better. It's a little difficult when you have 6 people and, doing all of these obligations, but we're trying the best we can.
That's fantastic. One of the other major things I want to highlight, and I'm going to ask Ed Tricelli to weigh in on this, is that this program, unlike some of the other baling wire and duct tape programs that had been put together in advance of the ERA program, this program allowed landlords to apply directly and be in the application process rather than just be a recipient of the check. Ed, did you, as a landlord, did you apply to this program, or have you helped people? Have you intervened in any way in trying to encourage your tenants to apply?
Yes, we have, and I'm going to ask Jordan to give more detail. We ourselves as landlords did not apply for any relief ourselves, but we did encourage our residents to apply in many different ways. And Jordan, maybe you can speak about the details on that.
If I could, I'm sorry, Jordan, if I could just jump in, I just wanted to make a quick comment here, because Christina said something that is so important that I really appreciate, that her office is helping people communicate with the courts that they have an application pending. And that's super helpful. What we have seen, what we're seeing right now in my office is that a lot of people are eligible for eviction protection. They fill out the certification, enter their docket number, the case gets administratively dismissed, happens pretty quickly. But then now landlords are objecting to these administrative dismissals based on, for example, this person has no application pending. And so something from, the Board of Social Services or whatever program that, or any kind of confirmation that you might get, that you can print out a screenshot or an email to show that you do have an application pending, then you can use that to counter and say, no, the case should remain dismissed. So I'm sorry to get too into the weeds with that, but I wanted to put that in there.
No, I'm really glad you pointed that out, because it definitely raised my eyebrows when Christina talked about someone physically sitting in the court to try to intervene. That is absolutely fantastic. Yeah, and I've got some, I think we'll talk more about that in a moment, but let's go to Jordan and we'll come back to you, Elisa, if you don't mind.
Sure. So primarily what I will do with residents is just talk them through the application process. It's pretty straightforward online, but there are documents that you need to submit right when you push the submit button. So I try to make sure that the residents let me know if they want to apply. I walk through the application with them if they have questions, and then make sure I can get the documentation to them, if it's their lease, their ledger, all of those pieces, so that it can all be submitted at once, which I think helps the process go a little bit more seamlessly.
Jordan, did you see a lot of, do you find yourself having to convince people to apply to these programs? Like, oh, I'm not going to get this. This is, I imagine, I'm not as needy as, the people that I see on TV. Tell me about some of the conversations that you've had with people that were initially resistant to apply to the programs.
I think in general, the people that are willing to say, I do need help, I can help to alleviate any concerns that they have and say, these programs are designed for you. And it's out here. I think the challenge is when people don't come directly to us. We see that they haven't paid their rent for a couple months. We try to reach out. They don't get back to us. That's more so the challenge. And then I haven't seen a whole lot of people saying, I don't think that I'll qualify, or I don't know that I need this. But of course, that's part of the conversation, because these different programs have different eligibility. So some will accept an indirect effect of COVID. Some will require financial documentation to show the direct impact of income loss. And so it's kind of finding which program will fit best for that person's needs.
So you mentioned there are people that are just not responding. Is that still persist to this day? Are there people that just have gone unpaid and just not interacting with you at all?
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, there are a few of those, and despite our best efforts to reach out to these folks in a very sincere and respectful way, we have not received any feedback whatsoever, and we don't even know why that is, right? I mean, everybody has a sense that there are people who are fearful of applying for whatever reason because of paperwork and just that sort of preconceived notion that there's going to be some other consequence to filling out some paperwork, but we aren't even hearing that. I mean, it's really hard to know why these folks aren't responding, and we're trying to keep them in their homes, and it's frustrating for us, but there must be a good reason, right? But we just don't know what it is.
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of the mortgage crisis from 2008 and 9, when foreclosures were just, when the wave of foreclosures started. And at the time I was working as a consultant for municipalities that had an interest in keeping these homes from being foreclosed upon. And I remember there were a lot of situations where we were attempting to engage these people and say, hey, look, the community, or even the bank in some cases, is looking to revisit your loan and get you to be able to stay in the unit. And it was like breaking through a brick wall. I mean, there were letters would go in the garbage, we would think. And it wasn't until we started getting creative and mailing, and I started to go off on a little tangent here, but we started mailing boxes to people with a letter in it, with the idea that if the envelope's easy to throw away, right? The box, people tend to be a little bit more excited when a box arrives. And we would put stuff in the box to get their attention too, but I don't want to go into that. Long story short, yeah, it's very strange. I feel like this is going to be one of those things where there's endless studies and analysis done of this, of how we recover from this, and how we, the lessons learned from all of this. And Christina, there's a couple of questions for you that have popped up in the Q&A. Jimena Calle is asking about residency status. Is that what's your program?
We don't ask the question.
Don't even ask a question. Okay. But that, again, that's a treasury program allowed for that flexibility, and it was up to the community to adopt that as a policy. Is that a correct statement?
Yes. We don't ask
Okay.
the question.
Okay. Dwayne had a follow-up question about the funds. He wants to know if you've qualified for round 2 of the U.S. Treasury funds.
Yes, we just haven't, the county did. The county of Mercer qualified. We just haven't gotten they have the funds right now. We're still working with round 1 funds.
Okay. And just to unpack that a little bit, there was a threshold by which you needed to reach in order to qualify for that second round, right? There was a spending threshold.
Mhm. I believe it was 30% of what we received. We had to show that we paid out 30% of the monies that were received. I believe that as of the end of September.
Excellent. Excellent. And I know that there's a lot of communities around the country struggling with reaching those thresholds. And it's while it seems like a relatively low benchmark, I think it's a very worthy moment to celebrate the success of your program, Christina. That is, it's great that you've gotten over that threshold and you're going to have access to all those extra funds. Elisa, I'd love to go back and talk more about this, this particular need that you see at the court system. Certainly having a county representative there to help people with this paperwork is helpful. But are you seeing, in similar question from Jordan, are you seeing people that are coming to you with a problem, but yet that are resistant or have some sort of obstacle, whether it be in their own head or whether it be a program limitation?
Yes, unfortunately, I've had, I had a client the other day tell me that she wouldn't qualify for any assistance because she hasn't been in New Jersey long enough. So there's just misinformation, I guess, because the rules have kind of expanded to be more inclusive now, but the information just isn't out there. And I don't know, I guess, it's just hard to get people to be proactive in some cases. I wanted to say something about courts, because you asked me about that. So most court appointments, well, all of the, case management conferences and trial dates are virtual via Zoom. But the courts are open, so people can actually physically go there, and they have technology assistance. So they have separate rooms where individuals can, be seated at a table and set up with the video monitor and participate in their hearing that way. If they don't have access to a smartphone or a computer or even a phone, if they want to dial in. For example, if a tenant gets served with a warrant of removal, it's, just like before the pandemic, we're instructing those people to take the warrant to the courthouse at 175, 175 North Broad Street or South Broad Street. I have to look that up, but to take that and request a warrant hearing if they want to, dispute the before they get locked out. I'm sorry, that's my musical clock. I'm going to mute myself. Did you have any other questions about like courts?
Yeah, I'm curious to know if you're seeing. It seems like there's been a lot of little, provisions and things to protect people and to ensure that people have access to these funds. Are there situations that you're seeing where landlords are able to sort of hack the available rule set and regulations to maybe expedite an eviction or work around the rules?
I mean, I'm seeing a lot of creative things. There are a number of ways to evict a tenant other than non-payment. So we are seeing a lot of, notices that your lease is being terminated because you're violating the rules or you have destroyed the property or, something to that effect. And sometimes those cases kind of go hand in hand with cases where it's the tenant that's actually complaining about a repair that's needed, and maybe the landlord, for whatever reason, is not able to do it, even if they're being cited with code violations, maybe because of funding or, whatever is going on. I'm sorry. You were asking me, can you repeat that?
Yeah, just are there situations that you wish you could sort of save with a tweak of the rules or a clarification?
Certainly. I mean, it's hard sometimes if someone's approved for rental assistance, but maybe it's just not quite enough to cover, the whole period that they owe. So there are limitations like that. We are seeing, landlords be flexible with payment arrangements, payment plans. So, it's both good and bad, but I guess it just depends. But like I said, unfortunately, we do see creative things where landlords are kind of trying to go around the rules, or maybe not respond or not cooperate with the program in order to get that funding. That might be the last step in the process for the rental assistance. And then some of the programs are actually, there's a way for the tenant to apply to get the funding themselves so that they can give it to the landlord if there's some obstacle for the landlord to get paid directly. But the most important thing is that people just try to exhaust, every effort to get that back rent paid. And then even, because unfortunately, it's just a necessary thing, even if you want to withhold that rent and force the landlord to repair something in the unit, that money is going to be necessary to deposit into court if it gets to that point.
That's a really important distinction that I want Christina to talk about for a second, and that is that these ERA programs, and again, we're talking about like the layer of the state having a program and counties having programs, and the flexibility that they have. The County of Mercer has designed a program, if I'm not mistaken, Christina, that is intended to address the entire arrearage amount and basically wipe away the opportunity for an eviction based on non-payment of rent. The state program has a slightly different take on that. And I'm not expecting you to speak on behalf of the state, but it's my understanding that they have a hard-coded maximum number of months that, so you could find, a tenant could find themselves in a situation where, yes, I've gotten through the application process. The state has awarded me X number of months, but I still owe 3 more months worth of rent. And they may find themselves in a position of having to go to the county. Is that, Christina, are you seeing situations like that?
Yes, we are. We're seeing situations where the state has paid X amount of months. The person still owes more months, so they'll apply to us and we can pay what DCA did not pay. As long as we're not duplicating the time, we can pay it. We've chosen to do it a little bit different. And we also are having the landlord sign, which we do for all of our emergency assistance programs, not just EREP. The landlord signs that they will not evict once they receive this funding.
Well, that's a very easy argument, or very easy for them to sign when they're getting 100% theoretically of the rent owed. Yeah.
And, to be fair to the landlords, my thought is, they've been struggling too. So we want to do the best that we can for them as well. We understand that they're in a bad spot because they had to pay whatever they were responsible to pay, and they weren't getting any income back. So we just really want to do the best for both. The problem that we do have with, if a landlord applies, we still have to go to the tenant. We still have to get documentation from the tenant. And a lot of times they tell us no. They don't want to do it. So it is a little bit difficult for the landlords to apply. We will do, like we did it with Trenton Housing Authority. They put the applications in, and then my staff went physically to THA to get all of the documents that we need for those tenants. We gave them envelopes to put the information in. We dropped them off, and then we went back and picked them up. We're doing that now, actually today, with another senior housing development in Trenton. We're trying to be as flexible as we can to try to help get these, whatever it is, owed. That doesn't mean that we're going to approve all of them, because some people we can't, but we will give them the opportunity at least to put the applications in. I know that we're going to South Village today, I believe, and they're doing paper apps. So there is a way to do a paper app if the person does not have access to a computer or whatever. We do have paper apps. We can mail them out, and then they can fill them out, send them back to us, and we will input them into the system. So everything has to go into the system, but we'll do the input.
Wow, that's really
Another-
labor intensive.
Oh,
Go ahead,
sorry.
Elise.
Another challenge is, the ongoing rent obligation after the back rent is paid, because a lot of people are experiencing unemployment, or just job loss or reduction of benefits, and so I think that's another thing that is discouraging folks from actually applying, because in the past, a lot of programs would not assist if the situation looked like it wasn't going to be sustainable. If the help wasn't really going to help. But now I think it's more flexible, where people are, landlords are getting paid, and then tenants have to deal with, okay, what's going to happen next month, or what's going to happen, starting 2022.
Yeah, one of the flexibilities that the Treasury built into the program was the ability to pay in advance, which is a crazy concept. If you backed up 2 years ago and said, yeah, we're going to pay people's rent in advance before it's even due. Christina, did you adopt that policy locally?
Yes, we're paying up until December if the person's eligible. We're paying right now we're paying November, December's rent.
Okay. And again, this is a mileage may vary. Yeah. This is various programs around the county, around the state at the county level may differ. I don't think the state of New Jersey adopted that policy,
I don't
correct?
believe so.
Okay.
That's how we're doing it.
But I just very briefly want to just sort of, go ahead, Christina. Please.
Our goal is not to have people evicted, because we've paid all of this money and then they can't pay it going forward. This is the Board of Social Services. So we also are advising people to apply for other programs. If we think they're going to be eligible for TANF, or if they have a child in the home that's maybe disabled, we'll have them ask them to apply for SSI benefits. Make sure that if they're eligible for SNAP benefits. We're asking those questions.
And I feel like this is a really unique additional add-on service, I'll call it, that a Board of Social Service can provide. If a county or a state even is contracting with an outside agency to run one of these programs, I highly doubt that they're baking this into their process to identify opportunities for other wraparound services and supplemental services for folks. Jordan, I wanted to ask you quickly if you are seeing on the ground, if there's a reason for us to be optimistic. Are you seeing the situations that caused people to have rent arrearages? Are you seeing those things evolving into more stable income and seeing those problems changing for folks?
Yeah, I think so. I think a number of people we had a lot more people applying for rental assistance through our PCH SIR program. That's our own internal program. Those numbers have gone down for sure. So we had, I think, just 2 people apply last month. So, I mean, I can only guess that I'm hoping that those people are not applying to us because that means they have jobs again and they're working again and they don't need that rental assistance. So I think I'm hopeful. I think that there are more jobs available now than there were a couple of months ago. And So hopefully we continue to see people able to go back to work.
And you also have this unique advantage because you can see who wrote you the check for the rent too, right? So you can tell if the rent came from the tenant or if it was Christina's program or the state program that came in and paid
Exactly.
rent on behalf. So that's kind of interesting as well. Christina, I know you have this really cool dashboard set up that keeps track of who's applied, who's been successful, and measures them out in a bunch of different ways. Are you seeing anything from the people that are applying that surprise you? Are the people that are applying, do they seem to be following the demographic model that you would expect? And are there populations that you feel like are being underserved or misrepresented?
I think that the majority of the people that we're seeing that are applying are people that we thought would apply. There are a group of people that I am a little surprised at. And the amount of their rent, how much they were paying originally for their rent is astronomical. Like, these are people that had really high paying jobs and they've applied, and it's a smaller population of people, but it's definitely there. And the amount of their rent, it doesn't make sense for us not to try to assist them fully, because eventually most of those people have now returned to work and they won't need it going forward. But we wanted to make sure that at the end of it, they would still be able to maintain their living arrangements. We don't want people to be put out on the street, but the majority of the people that we received applications for were definitely in the grouping that we thought they would be, the people that we thought it would be.
And you're talking about it both from race and ethnicity to income levels as well, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Interesting. We got a question in the chat or in the Q&A box from Gail asking if there is an application deadline for your program in Mercer, Christina.
Not right now. We're just continuing to take the applications.
Okay, excellent. And we had a question earlier asking about whether or not there's assistance available for affordable housing owners to help with property, sewers, taxes, and other things like that. And that this is I'm going to do my best to answer it. And if anybody wants to chime in, feel free. There's no program at the level that the Treasury program the ERA program has rolled out. So if there are programs available for property taxes, sewer, utilities, even for mortgage assistance with principal and interest, those are going to be very localized programs. They may be programs that are set up at the county level. In some cases, there may even be municipally based programs. And in my experience, the funding source that tends to be used in that situation is the Community Development Block Grant Program. And there's the interesting thing about the CDBG program is that it is accessible under the CARES Act at another level than had been prior. In fact, there are funds available for virtually every municipality in the state in one way or another to access these funds, whether it be as part of a group of communities that work with a county, or whether it be a community that applies directly to the state Department of Community Affairs and accesses funds there. But there are a large amount of funds that are available. So even if you don't have a CDBG funded program in your community or your county, it may not be a bad idea to start asking questions about this other population of affordable housing residents in our state, and asking about setting up programs to address the potentially foreclosure situations. I mean, it's the timeline's obviously a little bit longer there, but it's still a threat to people's housing stability. And Elisa, I don't know if you're seeing any situations yet on your end with people that are struggling with as owners to stay in their house.
Well, for housing matters, we really deal with, tenants that are dealing with landlords. We do, assist. We have other areas of law where we, like consumer or bankruptcy, where we might be able to provide assistance to homeowners. But as far as, owners of, that are landlords, I don't at least in the housing unit that, that's not our area. So unfortunately, I can't help with that question too much. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. That's still useful information. Gail had a follow-up
Mark?
question. Yes, Ed, please.
I was just going to comment that for the affordable owners, they should contact the local municipal AA because a number of towns have set up affordability assistance programs, which will make loans oftentimes up to $2,500. And you can use that for the payment of taxes or sewer or other municipal charges. And usually they're deferred loans where they charge little or no interest and you have to repay it when the unit gets sold. So if somebody's in that boat, they ought to contact the local town administrative agent and see if there's an affordability assistance program available.
Excellent contribution, Ed. Thank you. And that's a mechanism that's available under the Mount Laurel regs that allows communities to help existing owners with maintaining the affordability of their units. And it's I think in my experience, a very underutilized mechanism. So the towns that are doing it are going to be more of the proactive, more of the stronger communities in the pursuit of affordable housing. So, but the other follow-up to that would be that if your town doesn't have one, this is an available mechanism for virtually every community that's sought protection under Mount Laurel. And it's something that maybe could be developed if it doesn't already exist. Gail had a follow-up question about HOA fees, and I do believe that I've not seen a program that has excluded those fees from assistance, mostly because they could also be a threat to housing stability if they sort of run out of control. The maintenance fees could end up with affecting someone's housing stability. Well, we've got just a few more minutes left in the session today, and I just wanted to give a chance for folks, just another plug for if anybody has any questions to throw them in the Q&A box. Ed, it struck me when Jordan was going over those slides that when you set up your program, your local program, especially the one that rolled out so early in this pandemic, I imagine there's a whole bunch of people that saw that slide and said, "Oh, they raised privately $500,000." I mean, it seems like something that may be a unique thing for Princeton. I mean, where do you feel though the Princeton's uniqueness, and when I say uniqueness, I mean it's relatively high median income. I think the median house value there is just blows the charts, blows the numbers off the charts. But where do you see your established relationships and your partnerships in the community being a part of that fundraising, and where was it just like this unique thing that happened in Princeton because of the relatively high incomes?
That's a really good question. What I want to stress is that initial rent relief fund, there was no fundraising per se. The organizations that were involved really had sort of, I will say, individual war chests that they contributed to this effort. Then there was some fundraising later on to supplement that initial compilation of funds, but it was really a bunch of organizations getting together, realizing that there was a need, that people were going to be exposed to losing their homes, and people just didn't want to see that happen, the leaders of those organizations. So I don't know that is a uniquely Princeton, development. If there are, similar groups of organizations that have that, a desire to keep people in their homes and have some resources to put together, that effort could succeed anywhere. You're right, though, the fundraising part, that's where our individual fund comes in, the one that PCH has. We did do some fundraising, and in addition to contributing our own funds from our own sort of reserves to do this, but that might, that you could say in that case that's a little bit more Princeton-like, because there is that pool of high net worth people to solicit for those funds. But I would say in the first sense, that first relief fund was more of just people getting together and trying to do the right thing.
That's fascinating. Jordan, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I think Ed covered it. Yeah.
Yeah. So Jordan, are you I'm sure there's, in addition to people raising eyebrows at the idea that 500,000 or more was raised privately, I think it might be surprising to some people on our call today to even know that there's a dedicated social worker in an affordable housing development. And maybe this is a better question for Ed. Ed, was this something that was always baked into the model for Princeton community housing, or is this something that's been more recent?
It's been more recent. Jordan and I have another colleague, Kate Hall, who is also a social worker, and her focus is more on the age-restricted communities that we have. But this has been a focus of us, so as I mentioned, over the last 9 or 10 years, to really bring in more social service, more social workers who can help our residents. Jordan's position is still unfortunately part-time, but we're working to make that a full-time position because we just see the need, not just now during a crisis, but just in general. And we're hopeful that we can expand her role because it's important.
Excellent, thank you. I'm going to just ask one more question. I'm going to open it up to all the panelists. And then we'll go to Ed for a wrap up. And I'm curious, I know we've talked a lot about technology and how that's made a big role in this. And I heard Christina say that they're physically going on site with paper applications, but are there other areas that you see, and this goes for all of you, are there other technological barriers that you're seeing that people have with just communicating with you, with accessing assistance, in dealing with any of these programs?
I'm sure Jordan will chime in here, but just Wi-Fi access is critical, and it's critical for every household really now. With all these Zoom calls that we're doing here and everything else. But for the folks who live in low and moderate income housing, it's not always possible to have that Wi-Fi or have it available consistently. So we're working again with the municipality of Princeton to try and broaden that access. Jordan, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, so sometimes we run into people who just have very basic cell phones that are not smartphones and they don't have computer access. And this happened recently, and I was able to submit the application for this resident and was able to get all the information via phone with him. And so I think there are workarounds for people that are a little bit less tech savvy. And then we do have, I think there's about maybe 15 households that don't have an email address on file with us at Princeton Community Village. So the large majority of our residents have email access, and so that's helpful. But I think Kate Hall's work with the older adults, I think there's a bit more challenge there sometimes with technology.
Christina, is the paper application, does that seem to be addressing the gap in technology? Are there, if you could, would you blow that out and make it available to more people and do more of those on-site visits?
The problem is that I don't have the staff to do that.
Right.
I would gladly do it if I had the staff, but I really don't. And we'll do whatever we can. And I have had people go out and do those applications. But I've had them call in, people have called in, and we can do the application while they're on the phone with us. And we just do it without the paper application. We just do it on the system. The problem with that is that we get hundreds of calls a day. So it is a little time consuming, but we will do it. And that, I think, is one of the problems that we do have, is that because it's online, to do that application, it does take us some time to get everything to the system correctly.
Christina, are there?
I'm sorry. One of the things I wanted to mention is a lot of people in Mercer anyway, they're confusing the programs. So if someone says to you that they've applied, ask them if it was a pre-app, because DCA does a pre-app. We do not. DCA does a pre-app, and then they're put into a lottery. If they're picked from the lottery, then they complete the full app. Ours isn't like that. Ours is just the application process. that's, there's no pre-application. And a lot of people think that we are DCA or, or vice versa. And we try to make sure that people understand, we ask that question, was it a pre-app? Did you get a notice saying, what did you get noticed back from DCA? And then when they send us that, we say, well, okay, well, you applied for DCA and not Mercer County. So there's two different ways. So I just wanted to make that clear that people could, if you ask the question, they should know which one, because the applicant doesn't understand it.
No, because
Yeah.
they'll say I applied to the ERAP program, and you'll,
Exactly.
and then they did.
And they did. It's just not ours.
Yeah, Reverend Bullock put a great FYI in the Q&A, and we'll share the link to this program as part of the follow-up to the call. But he's calling out a HMFA program that's designed to help homeowners with assistance up to $35,000. So that sounds really promising. So we'll share that. We'll also share some links with other programs around the state that are. There's a website, a sort of a clearinghouse of all these these ERA programs around the state. We'll be sharing that as part of the follow-up email. And we've got our last question of the day. But Lisa, I wanted to check in with you to see, are there frustration points and with technology and in this sort of post-COVID world with you being able to do your job?
I mean, it has made some things, take a little bit longer. For example, there are things that we can do just over the phone with clients, like with our clients' permission, we're able to actually do the DCA self-certification of income over the phone, with us doing it on the computer for them and just reading, all the questions and having them give their approval. For the Trenton pilot program that I was talking about, clients actually do need to sign a physical authorization form for us to share that information. And so we have problems where they don't have access to a printer, or they're not able to, digitally sign it and get it back to us. But we are, and then of course we're relying on the mail to send hard copies. And we are able to kind of try to work around those challenges, but that just takes a little bit longer when you're waiting for it to come in the mail. So we, for clients that really have technology and internet challenges, like I said, we do have our client door, even though it's not open for walk-ins, we have the mail slot. And so you can put your documents through there and safely get them to us. We have people checking the mail several times a week and scanning those documents to, the attorney or paralegal that it needs to go to. And like I said, the court has really been helpful as well with getting, tenants access to, be able to attend their hearings so that they're not getting default judgments just for not having technology access.
Well, I want to thank everybody for being on the panel today. This is, I feel like I got a chance to ask all these burning questions that I've had, but I'm hopeful that everybody on our call today was also, it was useful to them as well. Ed, I'm going to turn it over to you for closing remarks.
All right, thank you. And I'd like to thank you, Mark, for overseeing our webinar today, and especially thank all of our participants. I think the AHPNJ tries to present programming that contains some nuts and bolts advice to people in the affordable housing field. And I think today, this presentation really did address a lot of issues, hopefully, that AAs and others that tuned in. And I see we had about 50 participants and answered some of the questions. If there are any lingering questions, please send them in to AHPNJ. We'll certainly get back to you. And again, I thank you and the panelists for joining us. We'll keep you posted about future programming. I promise you in 2022, we're going to be live and in person. And we're looking forward to that. Hopefully you are as well. Thanks for joining us and have a good day.